honored guests, dear colleagues. My topic has been already introduced, so I will not repeat it. I will just begin so that we can really end this session on time as promised. 2 weeks after the Bolshevik coup in Petrograd, in November of 1917, General Mikhail Alexeyev, the founder of the principal center of anti-Bolshevik Russia, or White Russia as it is called, drafted a plan for the attainment of what he saw as the chief objective of his movement, which can be summarized in one phrase: the salvation of one and indivisible Russia. Единая неделимая Россия. This first, and in the course of the following 3 years, closely followed plan is directly related to our discussion of the Ukrainian Revolution, because the chief concern of the White General focused not on the Bolshevik regime, which at this time was creating a bloodbath in the Russian capital, but on the Ukrainian Central Rada in Kyiv, which Alexeyev and his political entourage viewed as the most dangerous obstacle to the empire's reunification. According to the plan, during the first preliminary stage of the impending struggle, the most urgent assignment was the establishment of an agitation and intelligence bureau, and I'm quoting, with a special mission directed against the Ukrainian Central Rada in Kyiv. The reason why the mission directed against the Central Rada was of primary significance, the Russian general explained, was the fact that the Ukrainian Central Rada represented, and again I'm quoting his words and you will see why, an intelligent, serious opponent, skillfully led and subsidized from outside. Because of the danger that the Ukrainian government posed to the reunification of Russia, appropriate measures had to be taken to discredit the Ukrainian political leaders and to expose the Rada and the Ukrainian government as treacherous and alien body in Kyiv. In view of the fact that Russian counterintelligence apparatus has been dismantled by the Ukrainian government, Alexeyev urged that a new intelligence gathering center be established there for the sole purpose of monitoring the Ukrainian government's activities. Steps in this direction had to be taken immediately, the general stressed, because even though, according to the latest reports sent by loyal to Russia agents in Kyiv, the Rada did not have as yet very strong roots. With every month its position was being strengthened and the number of its opponents was increasing. An open struggle with the Ukrainians, the Russian general did not view as realistic because of the lack of resources, but finding ways to discredit the Ukrainian political leaders he considered both possible and highly desirable. It would be difficult not to notice, even if you did not listen too closely to what I have said at the very beginning, that what has been presented in Alexeyev's plan represents a blueprint for a hybrid war, which is almost identical to the one unleashed against the Ukrainian government by the Russian leaders today, exactly 100 years ago. The similarity should not come as a surprise to many of you, because today's leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, holds in high esteem the White generals, in particular Alexeyev's successor, General Putin, whose body just a number of years ago has been brought back to Russia and reburied with honors in a solemn ceremony in Moscow. General Alexeyev's preoccupation one might even say obsession with the Ukrainian question may come as a surprise to, if not a shock, to some of you who are familiar with the century-old effort by Russian emigre intellectuals to marginalize the significance of the Central Rada and in general the Ukrainian revolution, reducing Ukraine's 3-year struggle to separate itself from Russia to, so to speak, a tempest in a teapot, and depicting the leaders of the Ukrainian government as a cluster of inept politicians who have left no significant imprint on history and therefore are beyond the scope of serious scholarly studies. I think many of us, Marta included at Columbia, have encountered that. I'm not sure whether Marta had Professor Fulinsky, an old man, but he was part, so to speak. The father was part of the right wing. Minimizing the significance of the Ukrainian struggle for independence for a somewhat different reason has been the preoccupation of Soviet historiography as well. This deliberate downsizing of the Ukrainian revolution from two opposite political poles inevitably has had an impact on scholarship in the West, including the Ukrainian diaspora. Some well-known Ukrainian research centers today, as well as a number of intellectually sophisticated publications, have ignored the 100th anniversary of the Ukrainian Revolution, and those which were practically pressured to do so chose the approach of the revolution's marginalization. Here I want to say that in the 50s, in the 60s, there was some serious studies on this topic. Among them, John Reshetak's Ukrainian Revolution should be mentioned. Still a very good book. It was published by Princeton University. He studied at Harvard. There's also a collection of essays edited by Taras Chomiak and many others. But lately, there was practically nothing published on the Ukrainian Revolution, with the exception of some articles that were collected from a conference that we organized with Columbia University 20 years ago. Fortunately, for those who care for scholarly integrity and historical objectivity, archival sources testify otherwise, as you have seen, Alexeyev's plan and Alexeyev's letter attached to it. If during the past century historians have found some valid reasons to criticize the white leadership, and every leadership has its critics, and this is perfectly fine, whether it is the white leadership or the Ukrainian leadership or the Bolshevik leadership, but no center has been criticized as strongly as the white leaders. We have to give them credit, nevertheless, for the manner in which they knew how to protect their documents, how to save their archives. When the white leaders were fleeing from the Crimea, they brought the entire archive, more than a 3-year archive, brought it to Turkey, and from there the archive was brought to the United States, and now it is located at Stanford University in the Hoover Institution Archives, and my book and also many of my other studies are based primarily on the documents at the Hoover Institution. And partly this presentation is based on that as well. Pinpointing the Ukrainian political awakening as the most dangerous obstacle to Russia's reunification has come through with unmistakable clarity in Alexeyev's plan of a hybrid war. Well, every war that has the hybrid component in it. What is interesting with respect to this war is that for more than a year, it was exclusively a hybrid war against Ukraine. Then it became a hot war as well. This project was prepared, as the general acknowledged, with the assistance of the White Movement's political advisors, the majority of whom were members of the Russian Liberal Party, best known under the name Constitutional Democrats. Among them, during the early period, was the Russian historian and leader of the party, Pavel Liubomyr. In the opinion of this prominent Russian intellectual, the president of the Ukrainian Central Rada, Bohachevsky, was and I'm quoting, sophisticated political leader who acquired experience to fight for national goals in Austro-Slavic province of Galicia. Obviously, he's referring to the fact that Bohachevsky, for more than a decade, was a professor in Greek, and who during the revolution, Liubomyr continues, employed those clever maneuvers against the government in Russia. Bohachevsky's political talent received even a higher marks from one of Liubomir's colleagues, the well-known Russian jurist, Baron Boris Noivik, for whom the leader of the Ukrainian Central Rada represented, and I'm quoting, a seasoned European politician, educated in a school of sophisticated political formulas and intricate political struggle, who during the revolution towered far above the political dilettantes in Kyiv and in Petrograd. Will you find this in a book on the Ukrainian Revolution by a Russian historian? No, no. I'm taking this book from the archive, but not only archive, it's also published in Christus, well-known document. What exactly was the position of the Russian liberals, first as active members of the Russian provisional government, and later as the advisors of the White Movement with respect to Ukraine? Judging by Piotr Strube's well-known article in Discussant, written shortly before the outbreak of the war, the liberals had a very good grasp of the Ukrainian question. I think some of you are familiar with this series of articles. Most certainly, they had a better understanding of it than any other major Russian political party. They did not try to trivialize it or simplify it as did parties on the right or left. In contrast to the conservatives, that is the monarchists, the liberals did not view the Ukrainian national awakening as a consequence of a foreign intrigue, even though they could use this claim in order to discredit the Ukrainian government during the revolution, as we have seen in Alexeyev's letter. Even though, on the other hand, unlike the parties on the left, the socialist revolutionaries, the Marxists, including the Bolsheviks, the liberals did not interpret the intensification of the Ukrainian political movement as an emotional reaction to the short-sighted policy of Tsarist repressions. They understood very well the danger of a national revival among the minorities, not only Ukrainians, but the minorities in general of the Russian Empire, if it was led by an intelligentsia capable of forging a strong bonds with the masses. Success in this sphere troubled the liberals during the revolution because the support which the Ukrainian population was manifesting toward the Central Rada during the spring and summer of 1917. Okay, it's not working. Well, there are a few photos of the Ukrainian manifestations in support of the Rada. This is now, it is the Ukrainian government of which Alexeyev spoke as an alien body. So, we don't have time to enumerate, but they are Ukrainians in the full sense of the word. Success in this sphere troubled the Russian liberals during the revolution because the support which the Ukrainian population was manifesting toward the Central Rada during the spring and summer 1917 could have opened the way to the recognition of Ukraine's separate resistance by Russia's allies, and it was this eventuality that the liberals, as confirmed legalists, feared most. And this is very well documented. Such possibility appeared on the horizon, especially after the Bolshevik coup, when representatives of France and England in particular began to show a keen interest in the Ukrainian political developments. Throughout the 3 years of the Civil War, the leadership of the White Movement systematically avoided contacts with all Ukrainian governments, irrespective of their political composition and irrespective of whether they favored independence or federation. During the Central Rada period, as already noted, the white leaders portrayed the Ukrainian intelligentsia as German agents, who together with the Bolsheviks were hired by Russia's enemies in order to bring about the empire's collapse. They emphasized that there were no historical or legal grounds for separate Ukrainian state. Oh, same as we hear today. That the Ukrainians were not a nation, and this is written by the cadets, by the constitutional Democrats. The Ukrainians were not a nation, but a political party. And therefore, there were no valid grounds for establishing diplomatic relations with the government in Kiev. During the conservative rule of Skoropadsky, which followed the Central Rada, the Ukrainian hetman and his ministers were depicted as opportunists who betrayed Russia for personal and class interests, material interests. When confirmed rumors regarding an alliance between the volunteer army and the hetman's government began to circulate in Kiev, the National Center, which was a Russian political group in the capital, led by the liberals, was organized for the specific purpose to aid and support the white movement. When these rumors began to circulate, the National Center dispatched an alarming note to General Liubomyr, and I'm quoting, with traitors Skoropadsky in the Ukraine, which he is heading, no agreements or negotiations are to be permitted. If the volunteer army recognizes Skoropadsky in Ukraine, this will lead to her, Ukraine's full and final recognition. This is what they feared most. The National Center has decided to concentrate its effort on the struggle against the Ukrainian independence. And here I must just, I may just add that if Putin would be replaced by liberal Russians, we cannot expect a better attitude toward Ukraine. In fact, throughout history, we see that it is the center, the liberals, who tend to be most nationalist. I don't have time to explain it, but it's very easily explained. The socialist Ukrainian directory, which followed the conservative rule of Skoropadsky, had been initially portrayed in the white movement's propaganda as an ally of the Bolsheviks. When a war between the Bolshevik regime and the Ukrainian directory soon erupted, this claim or this allegation had to be put aside, and instead the unreliability of the Ukrainian directory's political leaders and the military weaknesses of the Ukrainian armies was stressed. These claims continued to be repeated even though the headquarters of the volunteer army were in possession of detailed intelligence reports which depicted or indicated that the directory's army represented the strongest force in the southwestern territory of the former Russian Empire, and when it became known that this fact was corroborated by independent observers of the French and British military agents in Ukraine. Did the hybrid war of the white movement achieve its desired objective? Some success and influence it undoubtedly had, just like it has today. Yet because both France and Britain had their military and diplomatic agents in Ukraine, whose reports contradicted, in most instances, the volunteer army's claims, the white movement's propaganda had a moderate success, with the exception of the newcomer to the war, and that is the United States, who acknowledged about Eastern Europe or Ukraine was non-existent, or practically non-existent. Also, the heightened sense of nationalism, which now infrequently escalated into imperial chauvinism and anti-Semitism, undermined the impact of the fusillade of anti-Ukrainian diatribes originating in the white centers. Where the impact of the hybrid war appears to have had a marked success was in the sphere of diversionary tactics, which involved assignments issued to the secret agents to create tension and division among Ukrainian army units, as well as political groups such as, for example, between the coalition army and the troops under Petliura. It is of interest to note that not too long after reports describing the excellent military training and exemplary discipline of the Galician army had reached the volunteer army's headquarters, comes the conclusion of an agreement between the Galician command and me. The conventional justification for this truly critical blow to the Ukrainian forces has been the spread of deadly typhus epidemic in Galician town, which indeed was true. Yet one cannot help wondering whether the devastating disease and the subsequent unexpected agreement were just a sheer coincidence. Derogatory epithets aimed at Petliura and other members of the directory, identical or strikingly similar to those manufactured in the white propaganda machine, were circulating among the Galicians, and we have documentation for that. Another instance of subversive activity involves the Ukrainian-Jewish relations. In 1919, the volunteer army leaders became concerned because of the success achieved by Ukraine in the sphere of diplomacy. These achievements they attributed to the participation in the Ukrainian Foreign Office of diplomats with Jewish background. Interestingly, not too long after, concern over this matter was expressed in the White Camp. Brutal acts of violence against the Jewish population in territories controlled by Ukrainian army began to spread. In the dispatches of white movement secret agents, meticulously preserved at the Hoover Institution archives, there are letters written by two volunteer army secret agents. I could not decipher their names, but they are there, which were planted in the Ukrainian army's headquarters, describing vividly, with unconcealed satisfaction, the acute mental stress and anguish that Petliura was experiencing on account of the spread of pogroms. The Ukrainian leader could not comprehend, the report noted, why these acts of violence continued unabated in spite of his explicit orders that they be stopped. One agent depicted them so vividly that I could almost see Petliura wanting to pull out his hair from his head. The pogroms did produce the desired effect, anticipated at the headquarters of the White Army. Arnold Margolin, the talented and energetic deputy minister of foreign affairs in Petliura's government, soon tendered his resignation, explaining apologetically that even though he was aware that the Ukrainian leader or the Ukrainian government were not to blame for the acts of violence. The pressure of some Jewish groups in the West was so strong that he had no choice but to step down. He continued to aid the Ukrainian government, but not in the capacity of a foreign minister. The hybrid warfare begun by the white movement during the revolution continued in full force in emigration, enjoying considerable success in academia, especially in the United States, where the knowledge of Eastern Europe was minimal. As already noted, Russian intellectuals made strenuous effort to reduce the 3-year Ukrainian struggle for independence to a mere footnote in history. In our time, this endeavor to minimize the achievements of the Ukrainian revolution has been supplanted by ideologically motivated works which focus on the 1920s without connecting the events during this period with their roots. The Ukrainian struggle for independence, 1917-1921. Consequently, credit for the cultural achievements in the decade is attributed to Lenin and his party. Lenin does deserve some credit, but not for willingly or consciously bringing about the blossoming of Ukrainian culture during the 1920s, but rather on account of his discerning eye, his correct assessment of the enormous impact of the national reawakening among the non-Russians of the empire during the first 3 years of the revolution. He recognized the danger that this national renaissance posed to the stability of his regime, and therefore at the moment when the very existence of the Bolshevik rule was in peril and the rebellion of the formerly most devoted Kronstadt sailors was the final warning, a rebellion about which practically no one writes about. Lenin chose to take a temporary step back, and he emphasized the fact that it was a temporary step back by inaugurating the new economic policy. The establishment of the Soviet Union with the national republics represented a part of this ideological detour from Marxist ideology. It is important to remember that these concessions were viewed as temporary only. Had Lenin lived, he would have dealt in practically the same way with the Ukrainian intelligentsia and events that followed. They were to last until the eagerly awaited proletarian revolution in Germany, optimistically viewed by Lenin as being just around the corner. This is 1922-23. The Soviet Socialist Ukrainian Republic would have never appeared on the map, and the political and cultural temporary concessions during the 1920s would have never been allowed by Lenin or any other Marxist leader, a true Marxist leader, had it not been for the opposition to the Bolshevik regime, which acquired ominous proportions in the 1920s among the nationalities in particular, and Ukrainians the largest of them. The inroads which were made in the sphere of national awakening during 1917-1921, in spite of Bolshevik armed invasions, and in spite of the intensity of the white movement's hybrid war, there was of course hybrid war on the Bolshevik side as well, had been too strong to be disregarded by the Bolshevik leader when the newborn Soviet state appeared to be in mortal danger. Now a few words about success or failure of the three competing forces in 1917-1921. The Russian imperial cause, the Ukrainian struggle for independence, and the Bolsheviks. Was the white leadership successful? To a certain degree, we can say yes. The reunification of the empire, after all, did take place. In fact, some Russian white officers, by the end of the war, chose to join the Red Army, and not only officers, but also some of the political agents in Denikin's government, explaining, well, see, The Bolsheviks were reunifying Russia. This is what we were fighting for. Russian imperial nationalism did thrive during the 70 years of the Soviet rule and continues to be very much allowed today to be alive in Putin's Russia. Similar conclusion can be reached with respect to the Ukrainian national revolution. No matter how feeble and impotent the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic had been in the political or cultural sense, the contours of its existence were preserved, and within them at least a whimper, a shadow of national life survived. It was this that provided the blueprint for the present state that we have, that is Ukraine. Time will tell whether this reawakening of the vital national forces would prove sufficiently strong in the face of renewed Russian imperial nationalist aggression. Time will tell which of the forces will prove stronger. The imperial one, founded by a Russian general, driven by a burning desire to restore Russia's former greatness, or the one set in motion in Kyiv by a Ukrainian historian who sensed the momentous opportunity that the events of the spring of 1917 provided for breaking away from Russia and for constructing the foundations of a state on which the present republic stands. With respect to the Bolsheviks, the third force competing for power, the verdict is an unmitigated failure, because for Putin and the millions of Russians who today rally to his cause, the real tragedy of the fall of the 70-year-old, very costly Marxist experiment described recently by a scholar on this period, brutally destructive and ruthlessly idealized. It's a Russian writer. That is, for them, the tragedy is not the collapse of the dysfunctional communism, but the loss of the respect and dignity of a strong and feared imperial power. In other words, Russia, one and indivisible. Thank you.